I've got a lot of opinions on Oregon Ducks football. That's one of the reasons, obviously, why this show exists in the first place. But there are a set of talking points. There are a set of opinions where I'm at the top of that hill. I am planting my flag, and I am willing to die on that hill on a group of opinions and a group of topics as it pertains to the perspectives of Duck football in 2025. Now, some of these might not be the most controversial topics, but I am extremely bullish. I am extremely confident in these groups of topics. All right, let's dive right into these hills that I am willing to die on right now. First one, there are bigger things out there. There are bigger fish to fry, as we say here in the Midwest, than a Big Ten championship for the Ducks. 2024, great season. Beating teams like Ohio State and Michigan during the regular season, and then you beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. That was phenomenal. A phenomenal accomplishment in year one participating in the Big Ten Conference. But what did it show us in the end? It showed us that was just one piece to the puzzle. Like, this is not the old days when you needed to win the Big Ten, when you needed to win the Pac-12 to get to the Rose Bowl and to have a national championship opportunity, that you needed to win all your games, that you needed to win a conference title to get a national championship opportunity. That's not what this is about anymore. The conference title is just one piece to the puzzle. What did last year also show us? It's about playing your best at the right time of the season. And that right time is the month of December. Sometimes it's all about momentum. In the NFL, they've been having this for years, where a team gets hot at the end of the regular season, they go into the playoffs, and they start to make a run. Sometimes it's not about the team that has the first round bye. Sometimes it's not about the team that has a week off, or in this case, many weeks off between the first week of December and then, of course, New Year's Day for these college football playoff quarterfinals. I think that the hill that I'm willing to die on is, hey, the Big Ten championship last year, that was great. We don't need a repeat. It's great if the repeat helps. And if that helps Oregon get that much closer to a potential national championship, because I think now the picture is clear. With the talent that Dan has brought in and the coaching and everything surrounding Oregon football right now, they've accomplished everything except win a national championship. So whatever helps you get to that point, you need to be able to do. If it's playing a lot of young players early in the season, having them learn those lessons, if it means taking a 2-possession loss to Penn State, if it means maybe losing a second loss sometime in the season. Ohio State last year was a perfect example. That loss to Michigan got them riled up. It got them ready to go. And then we know the run, obviously, that they went on at the end of the season. Not every situation, not every national champion is going to be like that, where, hey, you lose in a rivalry week and you get fired up and you go on this run. But the point that I'm trying to make is I think the most important thing is turning the 0 into a 1, I think, right now for Oregon football. If this is a team that has to go through their bumps on the road early in the season, if they got to lose a game, if they got to lose 2 games, to figure it out so that they're playing their best football in December, then, man, that's what needs to happen. It's more important winning in December than it is winning in October, than it certainly is winning in September. So whatever you got to do to get to that point, that's what you got to do. Hill to die on, number 1. Let's go to number 2, defensive side of the football. This Ducks defensive line will be one of the best in college football. I am extremely bullish on this topic. I am extremely confident. There's so much youth and inexperience around this Oregon roster in a lot of different places, and that's been one of the big talking points when you look at the broad topics surrounding Duck football. But there is actually a good amount of experience returning up front of the defensive line. You look at Mateo Uiagalelei. He had 10.5 sacks last year, led the Big Ten, and he played a little bit, certainly, the year before. Tatum Tuioti kind of in the same boat. Like, both Mateo and Tatum, they combined for 16 sacks and 21 tackles for loss last year. I think that's one of the best edge rushing, pass rushing combinations out there in all of college football, personally. And then you look to the interior. And, the two guys that are at least projected to start have a decent amount of experience. Bear Alexander, I know a lot has been said about him, but he's played a good amount of football before. You look at USC, not this past year, but back in 2023, he has some really good tape to show off. You look at Amari Washington, he played in all 14 games last season, and he was after Caldwell and after Harmon. He was that next guy in the rotation to provide depth on that defensive line. All across these four guys, there's experience. You don't have an extremely green and you don't have an extremely young guy that has next to zero experience. All these guys have been there. Now, different amounts of time and maybe in different places, but there's experience here. And I think there's good experience up front, and then you go to the depth. Like at the edge position, we talk about a little bit of experience. Blake Purchase has a little bit of that playing in that 2023 season. Of course, this was a redshirt year this past year in 2024, but I think my favorite performance from the spring game was Blake. He was in there on every single freaking play. So you have him, you have Ashton Porter, you have Elijah Rushing, like coming off the edge. Like there is so much depth, so you can keep your great players fresh. You can keep Mateo fresh, you can keep Tatum fresh, Amari fresh, Bear fresh. You go to the interior of the defensive line, and I think another thing that makes me so bullish and another thing that makes me so confident about this group up front is they have elite size. These, like you look at Tion Gray and Terrence Green, like these guys are what, 6'4", 6'5", 320, 330 pounds. Like Jericho Johnson takes it to another level if he's able to get into the rotation this season. Like they've got elite measurables. They've got a lot of depth. Their front group has at the very least, all together, put together a decent amount of experience. I think that this is going to be the group that is going to set the tone for the defense. I think that this is the group you're going to really see this defense and this pass rush and this front really unleash this season. I think you're going to see the best example of an Oregon defensive front that we've seen in the Dan Lanning and Tosh Lapoy era. Let's go to offense. There's a lot of weapons. Dante Moore, we know, is looking to sling the football around a little bit. We know about DeCorian Moore. Talk about him here in just a little bit. Evan Stewart and his track speed. How about the backfield? How about Mekhi Hughes? How about Noah Whittington coming back? And Dink Riggs. There's so many weapons, but to me, there's one that stands out above the rest as the best weapon, and it's Kenyon Sadiq, because you can line him up anywhere on the football field. You can line him up out wide. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up at the tight end position. Hell, you can even line him up in the backfield. We've seen that happen a couple of times, and he can get involved in some run concepts. Like, you line him up anywhere on the field, and you can create, whether by his talent or schematically, you can create an extremely favorable matchup. Small corners against him, he can use his size to be able to separate and post up. You got a slower linebacker or a safety against him, he can use his athleticism to burn by up the seam or wherever it is on a given concept and a given play. I look at a lot of these other guys on this offense, and I think they're really, really good weapons, but I'm most excited, I think, about what Kenyon Sadiq can truly be. On threes, J.D. Pickell called him the Big Ten's Brock Bowers. I think that he's going to have a similar impact on this offense where you are going to be able to look to him consistently to be able to make plays, keep on moving the sticks, and get big chunk plays, certainly going down the field. Every time I think about Kenyon Sadiq, I just get so excited about what this all could be. Let's move on to wide receiver. DeCorian Moore will be wide receiver 1 by the middle of the season. Now, I think it's a little bit, who knows, it could happen, but it's kind of a little bit crazy to think that Dak could be like wide receiver 1 right away. Not saying it can happen, because I think you need to build up some of those reps. You need to build up some of that chemistry a little bit in game situations to be able to get there. I think right out of the bat, Evan Stewart is certainly going to be your guy that, he's the returner. He's the experienced guy. He's the talented guy. He's been in this system for a year, that I think he's going to be the guy that we're going to look to. But I think as this season really goes along, we're going to see DeCorian Moore get a lot more comfortable against college defensive backs, against college coverages, and he's going to kind of work out those kinks, as many as there are. There might be a little, there might be a lot. We don't know. He's going to work out those kinks that he needs to, because I think when you look at talent and the package that a lot of these receivers bring, there's a reason that DeCorian Moore has been compared to Jamar Chase. Like, he's a freaking talented dude. I see the speed of Evan Stewart, but I think when you really can uncork this thing and possibly who can be the most talented player when you get to, for example, the Washington game in Week 12, I think that could be DeCorian Moore. I think once you get to Penn State game, once you get to Indiana game, I think you're going to really know what you got. And I think as that kind of starts to evolve, you're going to see DeCorian Moore really be that top X or Z receiver on the outside. And I know this is a little bit contrary to what I had in my projected depth chart, but hey, it's May. Things can certainly change on the fly here. We got a long way to go. But I think Evan Stewart is going to get a lot more comfortable working from that Tez Johnson position. Like, he's a really fast type of guy. You get him open in space, and I think that, like they did with Tez, and again, that's where you're going to get the best version of Evan Stewart. I think you put DeCorian Moore on the outside with his great explosiveness and his route running ability in one-on-one situations. That's where DeCorian is really going to come in, and that's where DeCorian is certainly going to play his best. So I think by the time he gets a little bit experience, he's going to really evolve as that top pass catcher on the outside for the Ducks. Last one, I've said this many times before, Naeem offered Trey McNutt. It is going to be very difficult to keep them off the field. In my projected depth chart, I had these guys as second-team guys. I don't think these guys are third-team guys. And look, people, I understand there's a lot of players that can contribute in the secondary. But I know the spring game is just one example out of the 15 examples that this coaching staff got this spring. But I saw the plays that they made against experienced receivers in the spring game. Naeem Offord making a play, Trey McNutt getting in there and making the play. I think these are 3-year guys. I don't think that these are guys that are going to be here for a 4th year. That's how talented that I think they are. I don't think either of these guys are going to really work into a starting role. Look, I'm not saying it's completely out of the equation. I think these guys are supremely talented. But to be honest with you, I think that these guys are going to have a role. They're going to be in the rotation. They're going to be in certain situations. They're going to be in certain packages. You're going to see them have an impact at certain times during this season for Oregon, especially I think once we get a little bit later in the season, you're really going to start to see the talent that these guys have. But, I think that these guys are really in line for 2026 and 2027 to be those impact starting guys to be able to work their way up to maybe be first-round draft picks when all is said and done. Good luck keeping them off the field.